Greetings. My name is Diane Brown, manager of Stetson Branch Library and board member of the International Festival of Arts and Ideas. Welcome to Slavery and the American Story. This is a part of our virtual programming.
I am Hanan Hameen, founder of New Haven's Juneteenth Coalition and the Arts Education Academy Network.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Nearing. I'm the curator of Ideas Programming. Welcome. The International Festival of Arts and Ideas is created and produced on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Paugussett, Niantic, and the Quinnipiac in the land we call home, Connecticut. We hope that wherever you are, you take a moment to acknowledge and honor the Native people whose lands you are on and the history of the place you are in. You can find out more about Native land wherever you are at nativeland.ca. I'll pop the link in the comments so you can check it out anywhere. The International Festival of Arts and Ideas stands with Black Lives Matter and with countless citizens in our own city and across the country who are exercising their right to protest the systemic racism at the root of police violence. The festival stands in solidarity with Black and Brown communities who are targeted and abused by unjust systems of oppression. And tonight's conversation is presented in partnership with Connecticut Humanities and support from our friends at the Whitney Center and Connecticut Public.
Today is Juneteenth, Freedom Day. Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. It was June 19th, 1865, that Union soldiers landed at Galveston, Texas, with the news that the war had ended and the enslaved were now free, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation.
In honor of liberation, we will be celebrating Juneteenth all weekend in New Haven with dance, libation, conversation, and artistry from all over the African diaspora. Join us. We are thrilled to introduce tonight's speakers to talk about slavery and the American story. First, Mercy Quaye, founder and principal of Connecticut's only anti-racist and social justice communications firm, Hearst Columnist, and New Haven native. Next, Al Letson, American poet, playwright, performer, journalist, radio, and podcast host. Since 2013, he's been the host of Pulitzer finalist Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting and PRX.
Our third speaker is the 2020 Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Nicole Hannah Jones, founder of the landmark 1619 podcast and project with the New York Times.
And we have New Haven's own remarkable musician, Paul Bryant Hudson. And he's here right now to introduce his song, John, which premiered today. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, thanks for having me. John is a song that I wrote years ago, and I'm excited to finally share it with you. The version you'll experience today is an acoustic version featuring Eric Ray on conga, Pete Greco on guitar, Trey Moore on bass. I hope you enjoy it.
I was born with it in my hand like a hammer in my hand, driving dreams deep below the crust and the mantle until they explode. Come on, John. Come on, John. I was born with it like a shadow, a chain with a crucifix hang. Don't remember my granddaddy's name, but I know who I Come on, John. Come on, John. Come
That was incredible, Paul. I mean, as always. I mean, no one is right. Like, let's give a.
All right.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, man, that was great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to jump right in. Like, tell us what the song is about. Tell us who John Henry is, and like, let's talk about it.
Word. Before I do, I just like I failed at this in the beginning. I should mention that it's like available on all streaming platforms. Isn't that what all the like cool musicians say? So like Tidal, Spotify, Apple Music, and all that available today. But to answer your question, the song sort of traces it's a folk reclamation piece, right? So the song like traces the story of John Henry as it relates to like the African American experience and story, and it sort of pays homage to Black American ancestry, and kind of recalls some of the contributions of our people. And the significance of John Henry is that for me he's a symbolic ancestor, and I think about his like own contributions in this story. But more importantly, the dreams he had, and the way those dreams were, in a sense, deferred and not realized until much later in history. So, without being too long-winded, it's a culmination of the exploration of Langston Hughes in Harlem and the story and intentionality of John Henry.
Yeah, I mean,
I think I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marcia.
No, all you.
I was just going to say that I think that one thing that gets lost when we talk about like Black Lives Matter is that, you know, fictitious Black Lives matters just as much as well, because fiction is a way, you know, we understand and how we talk about the world. I think a lot about characters that I've grown up with that I love, but also characters that like I feel like have been done wrong by their creators, like the whole, you know, magical Negro trope. And I think a lot about Stephen King, and because Lord, he loves to make some magical Negroes. And they deserve some justice and love too. So no, I love the song. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much. And also like the significance of like Black fictitious characters and like where the inspiration originates. It originates in a oftentimes painful reality and experience, but a significant experience. To me, more so than the luxury of frivolous dreaming, right? John Henry was made of real experiences and real pain and real drive. So yeah.
And even like being able to reclaim this symbolism, right? Like the symbolism of the hammer, right? Still driving man, all of that, reclaiming all of that hard work and being able to and build that back into, you know, the narrative that we live and exude today.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate y'all.
Al, Nicole, I'm so excited to be sharing a virtual stage with y'all.
Right on. I wish we were in person, but right, because if we were in person, I would have snuck some bourbon in for Nicole.
I mean, but it's good to be together on Juneteenth at the very least. I don't have bourbon, but I do have a juice box of honest. Not to evangelize myself, but yeah, I'm really excited to be talking about this topic, slavery in the American story. I think, as journalists and storytellers, right, the three of us, we have this, command of storytelling, so this command of stories, and for me, thinking about that title, I've just been resonating on that title all day and resonating on it being Juneteenth, Emancipation Day, and the delay of emancipation at that, right? And some of the things we know is that slavery is the narration to the American story. It's the theme, it's the plot, it's the character development, right? Like all of our story, our American story is tied and bound up in slavery.
So there is no American story without slavery.
Right.
There's none. The country that we live and inhabit right now would not exist if there wasn't slavery, which my friend Nikole Hannah-Jones so brilliantly did in her series with the New York Times.
Thank you. You want me to add to that?
Yeah, I mean,
it's true. And of course, the reason why we've never had an Emancipation Day in the United States when many of the countries in the Americas that practice chattel slavery do celebrate emancipation is this, hundreds year-long effort to sanitize our history. And what makes us so wedded to that sanitation is we were the only one of these countries that was founded on the ideals of inalienable rights. We were the only one of these countries founded with a document that said we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And so to have that type of glaring and brutal hypocrisy at your founding has meant we've never been comfortable with addressing that history. And when I've been thinking about narrative, one of the things about our experience is so much of our narrative could not ever have been written down. When we think about how we know so much about what it was like for Jewish victims of the Holocaust, it's because they were able to write their stories down. We have an excruciating amount of detail about that. And most of us were not allowed to be literate during slavery. You can't go back and find reams of letters that lovers were writing to each other, or stories that they were writing down for their children. We have some narratives afterwards, but it is our duty to write those stories because so many of them were unable to write those stories for themselves.
I think, and also, I mean, it's such a good point. And for me, it really cements something that I've been feeling is like, particularly around this moment in time where the Black folks around me feel like this is what we've been telling y'all. We have been telling you this. So much of our history, because we can't refer back to the writings of our history, we have all been storytellers, just passing down that oral history, and putting ourselves sort of in the way of, being an active consumer of information about ourselves in a way that white folks don't with this history. And so there's this moment where white folks are just very surprised and taken aback about what's happening right now.
Well, yeah, and it's more than about our ability to narrate our story. It's about when your entire existence has been in opposition to your country, you can't have this rosy view of forward progress. And Black people have never been able to afford to pretend that the country is not what it is.
Yeah.
We don't have that luxury. We have always had to see the country for what it is because we have borne the brunt of that. We've borne the brunt of that hypocrisy. We've borne the brunt of that violence. We've borne the brunt of how this country has never lived up to its founding creed. So when the country was built for you, you can pretend not to see all the things that don't affect you. But everything that is wrong with this country affects us. And that's what makes us different. It's not that, Black people are magical. But what makes us unique and what gives us our unique perspective on this country is we have the unique experience of being, along with Native people, the only people who didn't choose to be part of America, We didn't immigrate here. We weren't looking for a better life. We were forced to come here, and everything about our existence starts from that being forced. And so we just have a unique perspective. I would say a more honest and accurate and real perspective. That's why 98% of Black women voted against a white nationalist in the White House. We weren't shocked.
Yeah,
we weren't shocked about what could happen and the potential of this country to elect someone like that. But a lot of white people were.
Yep.
And I think, being able so much, Paul's song, John, is again another way that, for instance, the lore that we have been able to kind of reclaim and being able to reclaim our stories because of that. Something you said just now was really interesting to me. Because we have a unique history and we have a unique perspective being one of just two populations who didn't choose to be in America, right? The juxtaposition there for everyone else is this is also the America we built.
Yes.
Right. So we built this America for everyone else to enjoy.
That's right.
Right.
Yep.
Al, I mean, you dive into some of these issues, right? And particularly as there's a through line through to protest, unrest, like civil upset right now.
Sure.
In the reveal. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is I was taking a walk in a really nice neighborhood. I live in the Bay Area. I was in San Francisco. I was taking a walk through a really nice neighborhood, and I saw signs, and this was a mostly white area. I saw signs that said Black Lives Matter and white silence is white violence. And as much as like I appreciate the sentiment, I also think that what a lot of white people think Black Lives Matter is about is police brutality. And for me, what it's about is the way we actually live in America, that we are okay with everyday racism, that, those people that live in those houses probably don't realize this, but those houses were were not redlined, but Black people were kept out of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Black people were not allowed to bank in the places that they are. And me as a Black man walking around that white area, yeah, of course, like the police is definitely an issue that I'm worried about. But we should be just as concerned that Black people don't have the same opportunities to get in that neighborhood as we are about if a Black person is walking in that neighborhood, what a police officer is going to do. And so, so much of our worry tends to come from police officers or what we try to think about, or what we tend to think about is that the worry for Black men and Black women are police officers. But really, a lot of it as well is bank executives. A lot of it is Fortune 500 executives who are actively pursuing a racist agenda, even if they don't know that that's what they're doing. So it's like a much larger, I'm glad that the nation has woken up and is having these conversations, but I think that we need to keep our eyes focused on the larger question of, yes, Black life matters, and we shouldn't be okay with the fact that Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than a white woman is. We should not be okay with that. That is a sign of racism. We should be in the streets just as much for that as we are for the other things that happen. We should not be okay that and think that it's just a thing that Black people get diabetes more. Why? Because of racism. All of it is like connected together, and we don't like to talk about that because it just seems too big. But if we don't tackle the big stuff, we're never going to get out of this situation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Al, because I actually have a piece coming out that I've been dying over the last few days, because I'm worried that our asks and demands in this moment will be too small.
Absolutely.
The easiest thing in the world that any American should be able to support is that police should not be able to execute citizens without consequence. That is not a radical thought. That doesn't require a single person with power and privilege to give up a single damn thing to say you can't kneel on a man's neck until he dies in America. That should be the least thing. But when you want to know how much Black lives really matter, let's look at how many Black lives are in your kid's school. How many Black lives are in your actual neighborhood, right? Like it's easy to put a yard sign, but let the school district start talking about rezoning to actually integrate your kids' schools,
and suddenly Black lives don't matter quite that much. So police are just the enforcement arm of white power. That's what they do. Police are the representatives of white institutions that interact most intimately in Black communities, but they are simply doing the bidding of power. And
Absolutely.
if we truly want structural change, it's going to be much more painful than saying if a police kills someone, he or she should be held accountable.
Right.
It is the structural change. And this is where you find, all of my work, Al, is about trying to get white progressive people to actually live the values they say they have.
Right.
I was, arguing on Twitter, which I sometimes do every once in a while, with this guy, because you remember that little Black girl that a couple weeks ago, she was in the protest and everybody thought that was the most beautiful thing, which I didn't, but whatever. So he had a picture of that little Black girl, and it was his profile picture on Twitter. And yet he was arguing about how he couldn't put his child in a Black school because it was unfair to force his 6-year-old, to live his values. So what are the values here? It's easy to, and he said, well, I can support anti-racism in other ways. If you can't support anti-racism where it's intimate, where it's most harmful, where it affects the most people, then you can't actually support anti-racism. And I think what I fear is that for so many non-Black people, this is something that they can feel good about because it's easy to march in the street and say, don't kill Black people. But it doesn't actually require that much.
No.
And the real work requires a hell of a lot more.
Right. And I'm happy that you brought up that video because I got into a couple arguments about that video too. It's like everyone's celebrating this video. I was like, go get it. Look at her, powerful young Black girl. And I'm just like, this is an 8-year-old who is compelled, who is moved to the emotion that we're seeing on this video. Our 8-year-olds, our kids shouldn't be required to be in the street to protest and demand for justice for their lives. That just shouldn't be the thing that we experience, but it is at every level. Right. And so
I'm sorry, Mercy, go ahead.
No, all you, Al.
I was just going to say that I, for my mental health, have taken a serious break from social media for the last 6 months. Like, I don't even know the clip y'all talk about. But what I will say is it definitely in agreement with Nicole. I mean, what that man is basically telling you is that he's okay with your children and my children and all the Black children out there to carry the weight of American history, but his daughter cannot, and he cannot actually. It's like he's okay with that, but I'm good with like Black people having the minimum of not being killed in the street.
That's right.
And it's just like
killed without consequence, because we're not even saying don't be killed, but like if you're killed, somebody should probably have to pay for that.
Somebody should, right? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, what they're talking about, what he's advocating for, is a separate but equal reality.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what I told him. I said, well, all those little Black kids in that school that is not good enough for your child, they don't have a choice but to be on the front lines of this. They don't have a choice. They're there, right? So you can say, well, I can't make this choice for my child. And what he literally said is any parent who cares and is responsible about their child will fight not to have their child in that school. So basically all the kids who are forced into that school, their parents don't care. Their parents are not responsible, right? So it's like, you can't pretend to understand and be fighting against structural racism while you are defending and replicating structural racism because it's about your own personal life. I mean, that is how it's undone.
And that like gets to the actual the point of the problem with America is that the narrative that America wants to tell about itself is that you get everywhere on your own steam, that we all stand up and we all, like, this is a country made of rough individualism. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. But even people who want to see equality end up thinking that we are living in a world that's based on that idea that if you're poor because of something you did.
Yes.
Because of it, it's not like you're poor because of the history of America has kept you in that place and kept your family in that place. And then on the flip side, you have people who kind of get free, break through and are not poor. And some of those folks begin to think like, if I could do it, why couldn't you do it? And not understanding that, like, you have privileges that like help open all sorts of doors for you. You know, like where I stand right now, like I am in a much better place than where my dad was before him. But a lot of my dad's family are not in that same situation. And I don't think it's because anything is great or special about me. I think it's because like I had privileges that my cousins didn't get.
Yeah.
You know, like my dad got out of a bad situation and ended up in the military and got some education, was able to give that to me, and that let me go in the places that I've gone. But we end up believing in this American story that somehow or another, by our own great hard work and virtue, we are at where we are, and that is not the case.
So, I mean, and you, oh my gosh. And for me, what I hear echoed all through up and out what you're saying to me right now is, I mean, I put that back on to like the education system. You know, when I hear folks at BOE meetings or what have you online say things like, well, what children in all communities need is grit to get through their I'm sorry, grit? Right? Like, should I need grit to learn, or should I just be able to get here and learn? Right? That the space between my reality in New Haven, growing up in New Haven public schools, versus the space and the reality that folks have, you know, just down the shoreline in Madison is a very different reality. Right? They didn't have to have grit. And so if what we're saying is that we are a country that values hard work, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, why are we the only ones who have to do that hard work? Right? Like,
and that's the thing, we don't expect all children to have grit. The only time that you hear people talking about grit is for low income Black and brown children. The expectation for white children is that we will clear every obstacle out of that child's way. I mean, the whole point of this father saying, I can't put my child in that school, is that my child would struggle if I put my child in that school. So I have to use my privilege to put my child in a school where there will be no struggle. So grit is bullshit. Like the whole, we don't believe in grit for our own children, and we don't believe in grit for white children. So why is grit a necessity for Black and brown children? It's because we don't want to do what we need to do for those children. And honestly, like Al, you know this, most of these parents don't actually want equality. They'll tell you they want equality, but they, at the same time, they'll say, but I need to advantage my child. I need to make sure that my child gets the best of this so that my child has the best opportunity to get in the best schools and make the most money. They don't actually want equality. And I think that it is easy to believe in something in the abstract. I believe in equality in the abstract. But when it comes down to my individual choices in my individual life, people want to believe they got everything on their own. There's such a strong pull in this country to believe in a meritocracy, to ignore that invisible helping hand that just happens to every person who's white. Even if you're a poor person who's white, you're not in a country that's in opposition to you. So I don't believe that people actually want equality. I think people want to espouse those virtues while ensuring that the systems that benefit them and their families and people like them continue to benefit them. Because the truth is, if white Americans wanted equality, they're the majority of the country. They hold the reins of power. If they wanted equality, we would be a more equal country. It's not us that's making this country unequal.
Right. Amen.
I mean, simply put, right? Racism isn't a Black created issue, so it can't be a Black created solution, right? Right? People have to create that solution, be a part of that solution. I think also for me, what you're talking about is capitalism, which goes back to the root of the American story, right? The system of capitalism that we claim here in this country is rooted and was perfected in slavery, which is something you talk about at length in 1619.
Yeah, I mean, this is why people hated, well, some people hated the 1619 Project so much, because we're going after the two pillars of American, quote unquote, exceptionalism, which is the idea of democracy and the idea of capitalism. One was a complete lie until Black people made it a truth, and the other was a system of capitalism. If you will steal people from their country, if you will sell children away from mothers on the auction block, if you will say that Black women cannot be raped because their wombs are profitable, if you will work people to death for generations, if that is what your capitalism is based on, there is nothing that your system of capitalism will not do to exploit human beings. And that's what we need to understand. It's not that all forms of capitalism are inherently bad. But the type of capitalism born of chattel slavery is a capitalism that will do anything for profit. And that's what we really need to face in this country, but refuse to face.
Can I ask a question of you guys? Like, I'm curious if, given like the events that are happening right now, that have happened over the last couple weeks, which you know I think I would say is in my lifetime, the amount of people coming out and protesting and the things I've seen, it's unprecedented in my lifetime. I haven't seen it. And so I'm curious if you guys have hope that things will actually change, because I got to say, the cynic in me is like, I am so happy to see this. But I do not believe that I think that maybe we'll see in spots. Like, I think that it's really interesting what LA is talking about doing with the police. I think it's really interesting what Minneapolis is talking about doing with the police. But I think on a whole, I don't know. And when I see all of these big companies tweeting Black Lives Matter, it infuriates me, especially like companies that like I've had dealings with that tweet Black Lives Matter. And I'm just like, you wasn't saying that a couple weeks ago. Like, come on. So do you guys have hope? Has this changed the way you look at America?
I mean, hope is one thing. It hasn't changed the way I look at America. I really need some proof in the pudding. And if that pudding is produced by Ben and Jerry's, I might be more readily willing to have it. But even then, right, we're also talking about a company that still has its problems internally and externally, but is trying to go in the right direction. Here's why I am skeptical, right? When you say that the skeptic in you is sort of, the interest was piqued in the skeptic in you, I relate to that for this reason. We're asking to defund the police and pour all of these resources into other social services. And somehow the conversation about Aunt Jemima comes up, right? We didn't ask you to change a logo. That wasn't a part of the conversation, but it's distracting, right? But now it's a whole new conversation. And it's that sort of whiplash that I think often happens in these movements, right? And also the kinds of conversations around, for instance, well, don't protest like this doesn't work. Well, we tried to kneel, right? And when we tried to sit, we tried to do the sit-ins, right? We tried to do the die-ins. We tried to do the things that kept us out of your hair, but now we have to be in your hair to get motion into this movement. But what I'm seeing now, one thing that we do know that is proven by this moment is protest works. Now, how incrementally it works is another question that is yet to be proven. Something that I wrote about in my column last week was, it's funny how how much momentum in a movement can happen when we stop trying to reason with our oppressors, right? When we change the conversation from reform the police or police accountability and community policing to now defund the police, right? One of the people that I interviewed for this column last week, Mel Medina, who works with the ACLU in Connecticut, shout out to Mel. He said, listen, what you might be seeing a lot of superficial reforms happening, finally firing problematic police officers who have always had a problem for years, or trying to enact a civilian review board for the first time, even though your community has been talking about it for 10 years, right? But you're not responding to the cries of right now. You're responding to the cries of yesterday. You're not responding to the demands to stop police brutality. You're responding to the possibility of non-existence, and that's a completely different conversation. So, I mean, I'm hopeful, and I think the incremental progress will be interesting to see. But I'm by no means convinced that we're going to see a new day tomorrow, right? See a new day in the fight against racism in America tomorrow at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really indulge myself with hope. I don't find it that useful. I think that I'm of two minds on this. One, when you've been in a country or in a land for 400 years, the idea that you should be content with progress is bankrupt to me. We should be equal, period. Like, we shouldn't have to be fighting against these disparities. We shouldn't have to be fighting 400 years after we got here, to be treated as full citizens in the country we built. Like, we shouldn't have to be fighting for any of those things. At the same time, I'm a student of history, and I know that change is and has been incremental, that movements take decades. You know, we talk about the civil rights movement like it started in 1963, and by 1968, we passed all these laws. Civil rights movement starts at the end of World War I. It is a decades-long process. It is a decades and strategic long process. They didn't attack Brown v. Board, right? They don't attack public schools. They start with professional schools, saying, how can you turn away someone who wants to be a lawyer? They're already educated, right? So I get that. So much of what we're seeing now is the payoff from years and years of activists just pushing, and not giving up. And then all of a sudden, something so egregious happens. I mean, Emmett Till, right? Emmett Till is what changes the dynamic of the civil rights movement. White people have to see the most appalling and atrocious brutality sometimes to finally say, well, you know, it's probably enough now. We probably went too far. So I think we're in one of those moments. I mean, all of the police killings that came before, activists were working and preparing for this moment where we could say, you know what, we're just going to defund all this shit. But you couldn't ask that 5 years ago. You couldn't ask that 10 years ago. It had to build to that. And then we had to watch a man, and I say this with no hyperbole whatsoever, we had to watch a man be lynched. I don't use the word lynching to describe anything but lynching, but that's what that was, to kneel on someone's neck begging for their life with a camera, with your hand in your pocket for almost 9 minutes. That was a lynching. And that was what was too much. So I think we will clearly see some incremental changes. We're already seeing them. All of a sudden, politicians are realizing they have the moral courage to take down monuments to white enslaver and white supremacists. They're finally realizing, hey, we could do that. NASCAR is finally like, oh, damn, after 6 decades of letting white people fly a Confederate flag, that's not our values, right? Like Robert Goodell is like, oh, actually, Black lives do matter. That symbolism is important because we couldn't even get that shit before. So how do you expect to make progress on the big things if people won't even do the small things? But at the same time, you see the way that they're trying to play the masses, right? So, oh, New York City, we're going to require police officers to show their badge numbers. Well, that shit was already a requirement. So what does that ultimately do? So my fear is that we will start, I mean, we know, we can study history and we can tell exactly what will happen. We will see some big reforms and then a police officer is going to get shot. And then as soon as that police officer is killed, we'll say, see, we went too far. We got to roll back these changes. So Black people are just constantly held captive, held hostage to how long white people's attention span will be. How long can you keep white people sympathetic to your cause? You can make no mistakes because they're already looking for a reason to abandon you. And that is my fear, that we won't, as I said earlier, ask for enough. We certainly won't get enough. And it won't take long before white people are like, okay, we've given you all we're going to give you. And then we have seen historically this retrenchment and this backlash. So I'm not that hopeful.
I mean, I feel you. And I feel like, you know, so you talk, symbols matter. And I think language also matters. The conversation that we're hearing folks, white-led organizations, white individuals on their own say is we need to invite more Black people to the table. But you see how it's still your table, right? Like you see how you are so incapable of changing the dynamic that is embedded into your language, right? It is the power is still with you. And so, I mean, change is going to have to happen structurally, systemically, but it also has to happen with the man who didn't want to put his daughter in that same school, right? And that is the place where I'm not hopeful, right? Because people are feeling, white folks in particular, that they're feeling that putting the Black Lives Matter thing in my window, on my lawn, on my windshield is going to be enough. I'm standing up for my values. I'm wearing that on my chest. You're not actually. I'm wearing my Blackness on my chest. You can take down that sticker, that lawn sign, whenever you want, and you do, and that's the reason why we're not getting anywhere.
No. And I think also, you know, when we look at like everything that has happened since George Floyd was lynched, is we also have to put it in the lens of that we are in the middle of a pandemic. And I think that people have been at home for 3 months. I think that they are going stir crazy. and they see this and they don't have the same responsibilities or time responsibilities that they had before. And then it's easy to go out and protest and be seen. It's scary, but also it comes at a point when most of America, not most of America, but a lot of Americans are not really heeding science
That's
anymore
right.
because they've been cooped up for 3 months, right? And so I think, you know, just being honest, I think if George Floyd was murdered and there wasn't a pandemic going on, I think it would have been just the same as Eric Gardner.
Right.
I think it would have. I think like the same activists who have been out there pushing this would have been out there pushing and working their butts off. The same people that come out and let their voices be heard would be out there as well. But we wouldn't see these masses the way we're seeing right now. We wouldn't see, and I don't think we would see it lighting all across the country. But I think it's like all these things lined up in this perfect place. And sadly, you know, George Floyd had to be the catalyst to set it off. But I think that we're just in a very unique moment right now. And I don't think it's going to last. I think that all these companies, these big companies that are texting Black Lives Matter, are going to go right back to business as usual because it's America and it's business as usual.
Well, I
I
don't
mean,
think
you
it's
have
just
to.
companies.
I think. I mean, I don't. I'm not going to predict. I do think what is different is, yes, we are in the pandemic, but we also are seeing the results of our nation's death pact with white supremacy by who's in the White House, right? So not only does George Floyd happen in the middle of the pandemic with a white nationalist in a White House, but also a person who, because of white supremacy, is utterly incompetent to deal with the public health crisis that we're in. So I think there are a lot of Americans who, non-Black Americans, who are like, this country, I mean, the polling shows 80% of Americans think the country is going out of control. I think they are worried about these larger issues that we've gone too far, and we need to pull something back, that the threads, you know, whatever, however tenuous they were, that were holding this society together, are being pulled irreparably apart in a way that hurts them or will hurt them as well. Millions of white Americans got a taste of what Black life regularly looks like. No jobs, no income, don't know how you're going to pay your rent. And realizing that within, I was watching the news like a couple weeks ago, and they were featuring business owners who were worried that they were going to go under. 6 weeks of no income. And a businessman who had 5 restaurants in New York City says, if we don't open up, I'm going to lose all my businesses. 6 weeks. Now, these are folks who got 5 businesses. I'm assuming you have some kind of money if you have 5 businesses. And so I think so many white Americans have understood that you could have done all the things you're quote unquote supposed to, and something can happen and take it all away from you. Whereas before they couldn't understand that is the normative existence for Black people. So I certainly think that not having jobs, the pandemic, and wanting a moral reason to break the shutdown, right? So if I'm coming out because I'm protesting, I don't have to feel guilty about that. I think that is part of it. But I also think that many Americans just feel like this country is going out of control, and to watch for 8 minutes and 46 seconds a man begging for his life while police nonchalantly has his hand in the pocket was just a little too much. I think if George Floyd had died in a different manner, people would not have. Non-Black people would not have had this sustained resistance, but all of those things combined got us where we are. And this is why, you know, advocates and activists have to use this kind of once in a generation, maybe it's definitely in our lifetime moment, to force the type of change that once this moment is gone, we'll be unable to do.
I think this moment, we were uniquely positioned to see momentum in the movement during this moment. I think, you know, particularly coming from a communications background, we're all at home. We're running out of content. We had to be 3 months into, right, like running out of our trending on Netflix and our Hulu queues, right, running out of content.
Right.
For there to be momentum in this moment, for there to be shock and now George Floyd wasn't the beginning. Well, clearly none of the shootings this year were the beginning, but in this pandemic, we saw Ahmaud Arbery first. And then that was probably the first time that I was seeing people on Twitter, especially, like, get these people off our streets. Now it became these are crazy people. This is not your average white person. This is a crazy person. Get them off the street. That's like the talking point, right? That's not me. I don't do this, right? But get these crazy people off our streets. Then it was graduated to the shooting, the video. I'm sorry, the killing, the lynching, the video of George Floyd. We had to be primed with Ahmaud Arbery. We had to be out of content to watch, and we had to have everyone talking about the same thing at the same time with nothing else to talk about in the middle of a global pandemic. Mm-hmm. Now the question becomes, you said, Al, after this, is it going to be business as usual? Sure, for companies, right? But also for individuals, because it will literally have to be business as usual. If we are all tied up, Black people and white people alike, if we're all tied up with having to work and make ends meet to survive, we don't have time to fight for our liberation. And at that, if a white person, especially who has 5 businesses, is telling me that is saying out loud that I can't make ends meet at the end of this 6 weeks, he can't make it. If he can't make it, I sure as hell am not going to be able to make it. I don't have bootstraps. I don't have 5 businesses, right? So when it comes to it, businesses are going to go back to business as usual, but people will too, because they'll be employed again and they'll be busy, right? We're seeing protests get to swell to the numbers that they are because people are available.
Yeah, but I don't know that. I do think the pandemic has exposed a lot of the excuses that we've seen about why we can't do big things. Mm-hmm. So you can't tell me that you can't pass big spending packages now. Right. You can't tell me that there's no money for universal health care. You can't tell me that there's no money to guarantee a universal income for Americans, because it took them a matter of a couple of weeks to pass the biggest spending package in the history of our nation, trillions of dollars, without caring about a debt whatsoever, without caring about a deficit. So I do think it becomes harder after this moment, when we've shown what we can do if we choose, to then put that genie back in the bottle and say we can't do these things. It's just a matter of, do we have, the right advocates on the ground forcing this conversation to the forefront? I can't say with, who we have in the presidential race that is that inspiring. But I do think it just, that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Right.
It's just all of the lies that those of us who care about these issues knew were lies when we said we couldn't do certain things in this society. It's just been revealed. That slush fund, the PPE, $500-600 billion that the government is telling us they don't even have to tell us how they spent it or who they gave it to.
Right.
So we just, we as Americans can refuse to accept that because we have seen it. They have revealed that truth. Sorry, go ahead, Al.
I was just going to say the other thing to keep in mind, and Mercy, I agree with you, but I think the other thing to think about is the fact that the pandemic has not and will not go away.
It's not over.
That we are going to, I hate to even say this out loud, but we're going to see a second wave, and most likely big places are going to have to shut down again. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to have to start Star Trek from the beginning again, because
we're not even done with the first wave. I mean,
right, we're not even
crazy. We're not even done with the first wave yet.
Exactly. Like we are about to we have entered literally, I feel like I'm living in a season of Black Mirror, and we just cannot get out of it. Like, we're going to be here for a bit. And so how that all shapes out, and of course, like, I mean, the three of us know it, but just for our viewers watching, like, if you don't quite understand, like, the fact that COVID is killing Black folks at a much higher rate than it is anybody else, and don't understand that's about racism as well, I don't know what else to tell you, because race is connected to everything in this country. It's all interconnected, and we can see it happening in real time right now with this pandemic. And so, I don't have a lot of hope, but I think that what I do have is a lot of belief that there are some amazing activists that are doing good work on the ground that, like Nicole said, will use this and really push forward to make permanent change.
So we have a question from the audience. Do you think this moment of upheaval sets the stage for reparations?
No. I would like it to, but I think that, like, again, it goes back to what Nicole was saying earlier in the conversation of it's easy to march and have a sign up. It's a whole different ball of wax to ask for actual money to come out of it. And then the other thing that I think about it, I don't know if you guys saw The Watchmen on HBO, which, like, it's just I'm a comic book nerd, as you can see from all of these. Brilliant show. And I love the way they played how white people responded to Black people getting reparations in that show, the anti-Blackness that it churned up. So I think about that a lot. But no, I would hope it does, but I don't actually think that that's what's going to happen.
So interestingly, the piece that I'm working on is making, now don't y'all tell anybody, however many people are on here.
Keep to yourselves.
But that's the argument that my piece is making, that in this moment, we need to finally deal with economic justice in this country and economic justice for Black Americans. Now, do I think this is setting the table? No. Do I think it should set the table for reparations? Absolutely. If we're going to be in this transformative moment, then we need to actually be transformative. But honestly, the question of whether or not it will is going to be up to y'all, the people watching this. To politicians believe reparations is toxic, so they don't deal with it. So it is up to people to make it clear that it is not toxic, that it's the just thing to do. If we're going to get there. But I think it is time to make that argument. I'm not concerned about, I agree, The Watchmen was excellent, and I think it was 100% accurate on how people will respond to reparations. But the way I feel is we deal with anti-Blackness regardless.
Agreed.
Disadvantage regardless. They don't think we spend our money right regardless. So, you know, that's not going to change, but change the material condition of Black Americans, and we can mitigate so much of the racism that we're going to experience anyway.
Right. And I think that, you know, what's interesting to me is my answer to this question. I was actually going to say, stemming off of what you said earlier, Nicole, is I think this moment tells us that that reparations are possible. We've been told, well, there's no apparatus, right? There's no structure. How do we do something like that? This moment actually shows us this is possible, right?
Yeah, we didn't even have to tell them where we were. They were like, exactly. We know where you are. We'll send you your check. We'll send you your check. Don't worry about it. So yeah, it's 100%. It's again, we have the money if we want to. We know how to find people to give people their reparations if we want to. We can do it, and we, you know, our ancestors did not survive by having low, you know, the small ask. They had to demand what seemed impossible, and we may or may not see it, but if we don't make that demand, we certainly won't. So look in your next Sunday, not this Sunday, but next Sunday, New York Times. You'll see something special.
What does this moment require for white folks? Because I think what I think we as Black folks know is when we're among ourselves, we talk about race. Like, we talk about the things that matter to us, and we talk about the hard things. We don't avoid hard conversations. We don't have difficulty with confrontation. When there is a documentary that comes out, a movie that comes out that is about Black stories, about Black narratives, we dive into that head first. We are active consumers of our histories, but we're also active consumers of their histories. So what does this moment require for white folks? Because we all agree that they need to come to our table in order to create an equal system.
That's a big question. I think, you know, the truth of the matter is that it requires showing up, one, but showing up is the bare minimum. I think the second thing it requires a need for people to understand that they have to give a little. Like they have to, like, you can't have the whole table to yourself. You have to give up. You have to give up something. They have to get off of their addiction of white supremacy. I mean, I think that white supremacy is a hell of a drug, and a lot of people addicted to it don't even realize that they're on it, right?
Yeah.
I just think there's like what's required is a really big question, because in order to change, 400 years, you got to put a hell of a lot of work in to do that. Nicole is much wiser than me and more eloquent, so I will allow her to go.
Well, Nicole, passing it off to you, there's this line in 1619 that for me reigns so true, and I think about it all the time. It's, if left to their own devices, you're talking about white hospitals, right? And it is, if left to their own devices, white hospitals are going to stay white, right? And I think that about all of the white systems, right? And so what is, from your point of view, from your lens, from where you sit, what is needed for white people in order to make sure that this isn't the case?
So, this is a very common question when you talk about the things that we talk about, and often coming from white Americans who want to know. And I'm going to broaden this out, not just the white folks either, because it's not just white people who are capable of anti-Blackness, and we are certainly on the bottom of the American caste system.
Yeah.
From every other group who comes here. But I feel like there's this faux helplessness when it comes around race. So we didn't create these systems, and we didn't design them, we didn't implement them. White people knew how to construct them, have been constructing them, are still upholding them. They understand exactly how to work the system, how to ensure that their children are going to get access to the best schools, how to ensure that they're going to get access to the best neighborhoods. They understand exactly how the system works. But then when it comes to a moment like this, then there's this helplessness, like, oh, I need you to tell me what to do. And in my case, when I tell you what to do, you ain't trying to really do it. Like, you want us to tell you something like, oh, you should read these books or do some research. No, that's not, do that. And it's been heartening that, the top 10 books on the New York Times bestseller list have all been books about race. I'm glad that people are learning, but we can send people to the moon. We can create cell phones. Like, we can create all of these things. And when it comes to like, how do I undo structural racism? Suddenly white people are completely helpless, and they just want us to do the work for them and tell them what to do when they fully don't intend on taking that advice anyway. So I'm not going to tell white people how to deconstruct the systems that they have created, that they still maintain. You know what to do. You know when you move into an all-white neighborhood that you've moved into an all-white neighborhood. You know when you are in New Haven and you teach at the university, but you don't enroll your kids in the public schools in New Haven, what you're doing. You know. So stop doing it. That's what you need to do. It's like, use all those brains and all that power and all that authority and all of that knowledge that you use to create all of these things, and use it to undo what's been done. What Al said, right? James Baldwin said, white people have to give up whiteness. Are you willing to give up? It's not saying give up your identity, but are you willing to give up the structural advantages that you know very well that you have? And if you're not willing to do that, you're not actually sincere. And I'm not going to be the one wasting my time trying to tell you how to fix what you broke. You know how to fix it, but choose not to.
Right. There's no secret.
Now I'm get off my soapbox, but I
think that's great.
By that question anymore, because I just don't think it's ever sincere. And when I say, well, why don't you enroll your child in the black school down the street? Okay, but I can't do that. So what else?
Something else. So something
read Ibram Kendi's book on anti-racism. That's what you want me to tell you. Well, yes, read that shit, but then apply that shit in real life. Because if you're just going to read it and not apply it, it's not useful to me. And I'm not.
They want convenience.
Something that's easy. Right. Just something that's really easy, right? If it's not easy,
they want convenience.
Not comfortable. Then
and they want absolution, right? Like, we're the confessional. You confess how you really want to do something, but you really can't. And then I'm supposed to say, oh, I know it's hard. I know it's hard. So it's okay. No, it's not. It's not okay. Our people are suffering.
Over the last,
you have the power to do something about that.
Since George Floyd was murdered, I have gotten so many emails from white friends, white colleagues, saying a bit of the same, and I haven't answered a single one of them. I haven't said, I haven't text back a Dap, I haven't like said anything like, oh, it's all good. I have nothing to say at all. Like, please keep that
This is
for
gonna be
yourself. I
so
don't need
bootleg, but I gotta answer my door because we working from home. I'll be right back.
it.
We said it was gonna be different today on this call. We said
It's
it was.
all good. It's all good. It's all good.
No, but I think that you're right. And I think that there are so many times when you are engaging with your Black friends, right? As a white person, when you're engaging with your Black friends, you can't even imagine the amount of like annoyance that your question, that your right, like interruption, right? That interrupting my life with this question to ask you how to be better, to help you how to be better. I mean, we have an immense amount of self-control and resolve, probably finely tuned by 400 years of slavery. I don't know, just putting that out there. But for me, I'm sitting from a position of like, something has to give, and it's not Black people. So Nicole, I mean, moving forward, this entire this entire rhetoric around, like, it's the day-to-day decisions that you are making, all of that. I mean, bringing that back to my racism circles and the anti-racist homework series that people are having, right? It's not, there's not some secret sauce,
right?
Yeah, and it's not to say, I mean, look, we're all learning every day, and I don't expect I learn things all the time, and I'm not saying every white American or non-Black person should know all things and know how to fix. Of course, like, these systems have taken centuries to create. I understand that we don't all know how to destroy these systems, or what we should destroy and what we should keep. It's not that, but it's about like, do some of the work on your own first. Stop putting that burden on us, and then understand how disrespected we feel when you ask us what to do, but then tell us, okay, tell me something else because that's too hard. We don't have the choice as Black people. We just have to deal with the inequality we've been given, and the fact that you can pull in and pull out and dip and say, okay, well, this I'll accept and this I won't. You have to understand that if you're going to do that, leave me out of it. Like, don't
leave us alone altogether.
Don't bring me into that. But if you're serious about it, you're really about that, and you're like, okay, I don't really understand, but I'm going to do these things, then cool. I don't know a Black person who wouldn't have that conversation.
We have organizers here in New Haven. One of them, Addis Castillo, who runs the Citywide Youth Coalition, she has effectively changed the conversation from allies to, she doesn't say accomplice either. She says, I forget what word she uses, but it's one step beyond accomplice. Effectively, I don't want your allyhood because you get to take that hat off when you go home, right? And when you decide what content to consume at night, you get to take that hat off. Accomplice means you will have as much skin in the game as possible. Accomplice means when I'm in jail, you're in jail for it. For when I'm thinking about language, particularly because the three of us, we deal in language on a daily basis. What are some of those pieces that you're hearing where you're from, in your hometowns, in your circles of conversation that for you either needs to stop or needs to continue? I'm sorry. Somebody texted me and said co-conspirators.
I think when you, the last part of your question is like, what do you think needs to continue or stop? And I think that shifting a little bit of shift away from where we're going right now, I'm thinking more about like Black folks and not so much worried about white people.
Right.
And the thing that I'm encouraged about is the way Juneteenth is now definitely being looked at and thought about by a larger group of people. But it also seems to me that like Black folks are embracing it more than I've seen in the past. And that makes me so happy, because I think that like the thing that like drives me a little bit crazy, whenever there's a slave movie that comes out, a movie that like has like enslaved people in it or centered or around that narrative, there's always this commentary on Twitter about like, we don't need to see these type of things, blah 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 blah, from the Black community. And like, respectfully, I just completely disagree. a great podcast. Stoop Talks had LeVar Burton on one day, and he talked about that the fact that these stories are powerful, but because it shows that they threw everything at us. And they tried to take our humanity away and make us animals, and they did not fail. And the thing that I think about all the time is that, like, all the bad shit that happened in this country, we are still here. We are the remnants of something powerful and long lasting. And we will continue beyond the nonsense that happens to Black people in this country. And so I wholeheartedly embrace watching Black people embrace Juneteenth. I was so like ridiculously happy about the 1619 project, because finally it like gives you like, I felt like, you know, when Ta-Nehisi came out with a case for reparations, it like it laid a foundation to be like, this is like what I'm talking about. And then 1619 goes and expands it even more. And I just feel like those foundations and watching people celebrate Juneteenth, like, it's just an amazing thing. And that's what I want to see more of. Like, I'm done talking about white people. That's what I want to see more of, is us embracing that. Because I mean, man, when you just think about, did you guys ever see 12 Years a Slave? Man, that movie messed me up, because all I could think about is all of that. And I'm still here, you know? But my dad is still here. Like, we did it, you know?
I mean, I think that's why, I mean, that's one of the reasons I did the 1619 project. I did the 1619 project for us, because we're not taught this history any better than anybody else. And we're basically taught that we just submitted to our slavery, that the only thing we contributed to this country was our brute labor, that we did not, that we contributed intellect, not that we contributed democracy, not, you know, it's like, so we're taught to be ashamed, to feel a sense of shame that our history started with slavery, that we didn't fight back. And to actually be able to put out a project that says, actually, no, we are foundational to this country. We believed in these ideals, and we have sacrificed over generations to make this country as much of a democracy as it is, that we gave art, culture, language, literature. That, to me, I think, is what is so empowering. It's people are the response people get to movies about slavery is because we have so long been demeaned by this history instead of empowered by it. And I'm just like you, Al. I'm like, you know, I remember we were kids and you would always hear that Black people are the strongest people on the face of the earth. And you'd be like, okay, that sounds good, but that's probably not really true. But when you think that we had to first survive the march from the interior of Africa to the slave castles, about 40% of us didn't even make it. Then from the slave castles across the Middle Passage, 30 to 40% of us died before we got to America. And then once we got here, to have survived slavery and 100 years of racial terrorism, we actually are the strongest. Those of us who made it are by definition the strongest. And so we need to take pride in that. And I agree, you can't tell the story of slavery enough, because there's so many stories that have never been told. But it also can't just be the stories of us getting whipped all the damn time, right?
That's
Like,
what I'm saying.
You have to tell the story
Yeah.
of the ways we resisted and the way that we fought back behind like the worst odds. And even those who didn't run away were resisting every single day. Like we have to tell the stories of agency. And that's even when we're talking about Juneteenth, I'm like, tell the story. Like, the Emancipation Proclamation gets passed because Black folks were already emancipating themselves. They were running away. They were running behind Union lines. And that is where the idea of treating enslaved people like war contraband came, because Black people were self-liberating. So don't just tell the story that we were just waiting over there in slavery for good old master to come march and tell us that we were free. We were pushing, right? And it was our own self-liberation that leads to the Emancipation Proclamation that ultimately liberates, you know, close to 4 million Black folks. It's how we tell the narrative. And the narratives have always been to center the good white people, right? To center the white people in the story and not us, like we didn't have agency. And I think if we tell our stories of slavery and resistance where we are the agents, where we are the actors, then we won't feel demeaned by those stories. Sorry that answer was so long.
No, it's not long. It's not, I mean, listen, it's not long enough. I think that we could talk about this particular piece for hours. You know, I always say if you don't write your own narrative, it'll be written for us. And I think that is a little bit of the experience, the Black experience here in America, and Black people globally. I mean, 12 Years a Slave is an example. Like you said, it messed you up. It messed me up for a long time. And at that point, I was like, all right, I need different stories.
That was us writing our own story, though. I mean, it literally was based on him writing his own story.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and for me, it comes down to a story that felt liberating, a story that wasn't just us being whipped. Right, came out of WGN's network, Underground.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. And and for the first time, audiences of all races, but in particular Black people, right, had an opportunity to see what defiance looked like in the time of slavery.
That's right.
Right. And it was, sure, you know, fictional as it was bomb. It was a bomb story with a bomb score and bomb characters that sat back and said, all right, let's retell this story so that you can really see the defiance, the fire that burned in our belly for freedom, and understand how vile the condition of slavery actually was. I want more stories like that. And even with that, we see what happened with that TV show, right? And how that got canceled.
Absolutely. I would love to see. Let me just say that, like, I'm actually working on this, but I would love to see a story that takes place during Reconstruction, because Reconstruction is like one of the times that we just don't speak about enough, and Black folks were popping during Reconstruction. Like, give us the opportunity, and you will watch us grow. But every time we start to sprout, they cut it off, you know. But yeah, I want to see some stories during Reconstruction as well. You know, I definitely hear you that, like, there needs to be more stories than just the whipping. But you know what I'm saying? Like
oh, for sure.
We can't run from that. We have nothing to be ashamed of.
That's right.
Right.
You know, it's not us. You know,
and struggle is like the definitive Black American experience. It has been one of struggle. I mean, I think what's necessary is just more stories. If we didn't get so few of them on the big screen, or the small screen, then we wouldn't feel so compelled to be like another slavery story, right? Because we should be telling those and a host of stories. So in general, we just need more stories. And in that way, it's been an amazing time to be a writer. I think we're actually, when we look at who are making stories for television and for streaming services and for the big screen, and then like magazine writers or radio journalists, like we're in some ways a golden age of Black creation right now. And I think we have more power than we've ever had. And that to me is a beautiful thing. And look at the types of stories. I mean, I did a project at the New York Times that said Black people are the true founding fathers and our true founding date is 1619. Like, that is some amazing shit that we are in a time where we can command a platform like that to tell that type of story.
Amen.
We are trendsetters. We are culture framers. I think that when you talk about the framers of America and the American story, you should be talking about Black people, because we aren't just the cultural framers. We're the architectural framers of this country here. Are there any, what are we missing in this conversation when we talk about slavery and the American story? What's missing? Just the three of us here in conversation. What's missing?
In slavery, well, I think that. I think, again, like, I keep going back to 1619 because there's never been anything like it that, especially like in the New York Times, which, like, you know, I have a love-hate relationship with the New York Times. I love Nicole.
I don't take it personal. I don't take it personal.
I love Nicole. I love Wesley. I love Jenna. There's a lot of love in the New York Times, but sometimes. But I think, I think that, you know, what we cannot get enough of is continuing to do the work of 1619 and continuing to put context to the things that happen around us, continuing to connect the everyday things that we live with in our lives that we just accept, connect them back to slavery. Never let them forget, because, you know, I grew up in the South, and it took me to become an adult to really wrap my head around it. But growing up in the South, you would always hear white people say, don't talk about slavery. Like, you're bringing that up again. You're playing the race card, from the same people who are flying a Confederate flag talking about their heritage. Like, they get to hold on to our heritage, but we can't hold on to what their heritage did to us. And so I just think that we constantly need to put into context for Americans how slavery has affected not just this nation, but how it affects us all individually. Because if we don't put it in context, then they can keep doing the thing of like, that's old. We don't need to worry about it. That was a long time ago. I didn't, I didn't own any slaves, or my people didn't own any slaves. Man, get out of here with that nonsense. We need to like constantly bring people back to that.
I think the thing that is missing from this conversation is that slavery was an American phenomenon. It was not a Southern phenomenon. All 13 of the colonies practiced slavery. Slavery was practiced in New York until the 1830s. It was practiced in New Jersey until 1865. Connecticut, where so many of the viewers are, was a slave state. New Haven was a place. Hartford, they burned down Black schools in the 1800s. They didn't want Black children to get an education in Connecticut. So this is not simply, we one of the things we like to say is like, that was the South, as if most of our founders, right? Thomas Jefferson was a Southerner. George Washington was a Southerner. James Madison was a Southerner. The South was America, and America engaged in slavery, and America benefited from slavery, whether you were the Rhode Island slave trader that built Bristol and Brown University, but never actually owned human beings. You just sent the ships to get them and made money off of that. Whether you were the wheat farmer in the Midwest that was growing wheat and sending it down to the cotton plantations to feed people there. Whether you were the shipbuilder, the rope maker, the textile worker in Connecticut who wouldn't have had a job if it weren't for slave-grown cotton. We need to understand that this was an American phenomenon and that no hands were clean in this country. And if you came here after the end of slavery and you were not Black, you still benefited from a system of white supremacy upon which slavery was built. So I really wish we could just nationalize the understanding of what slavery meant for the wealth and the riches and for whiteness in this country. And also realize that I'm not ever arguing that white people should feel guilty for something that you did not personally do. You can't do anything about what those white people a long time ago did, but you have to stop ignoring it and downplaying it. And then you can have to take responsibility for the things that you do right now and the advantages that you accept right now. You don't have to feel guilty for that, but we can't run away from it. But you can feel guilty for all the stuff that you do now if you want.
Go ahead and feel guilty now. I'm so happy that you brought the history into it because, Connecticut often feels like, well, we didn't play a part in this. But slavery is an ecosystem. Racism is an ecosystem, right? And so the way that you're connecting the dots is really important here, and particularly in New Haven. Eli Whitney is a New Haven treasure. We have the Eli Whitney Museum, right? Understanding what the invention of the cotton gin did to the violence of slavery is an important part of understanding the American story, right? And then here in New Haven as well, we're talking about the Amistad trials and how that was a pivotal moment here in American history. So I am getting a cue from Liz Nearing. What I want to do is go around and leave our viewers with a couple like key gems on this moment here, what they should be paying attention to, right? In general, what should our viewers be paying attention to? Al, I love the way you said it, right? We are in a moment that the next few moments will define, right? Business as usual being, getting back to business as usual in the pandemic, but the pandemic is still with us. So what should people be paying attention to as this movement progresses and over the coming months and years of this moment?
I would just say, just reiterate what I said earlier, which is that if you believe that Black Lives Matter, they don't just matter when they are under duress from a police officer. Black Lives Matter across the board. So you have to think about that in healthcare. You have to think about that in finance. You have to think about what that means in just your everyday life. If you believe that Black Lives Matter and you want to stand for Black Lives Matter, which I hope you do, you just have to like widen your vision. It can't just be about like this one simple thing that we are going to fix police brutality, because Ta-Nehisi Coates said it a while back that like police just do what society is asking them to do.
Yep.
So fixing the police is not fixing the problem.
Right. Nicole?
I mean, I think you should be reading everything that Black folks are writing right now. We see this country with a type of clarity that I think almost no one else does. So if you want to understand this moment and what is your charge, you need to be reading what folks are writing. I agree, of course, with Al that if we're really going to have transformative change, it's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable, and folks are going to have to give something up. And I don't mean give something up like literally you got to give up your house or whatever. There's enough resources in this country that we could take care of all of our citizens if we choose to. But what that means is that some of us who have had an inordinate amount can't keep that inordinate amount. You're going to have to share those resources, like share your kids' actual classrooms, right? Share. That's what it's going to take. And if you're really about liberation, because the truth is, like they said at the Combahee River Collective, that if Black women are free, then all people are free, because Black women sit at the center of oppression. And we keep trying to tell y'all what to do, and you don't listen to us. So you can't have equality if it's on somebody else's back. Or we could say, I guess, in honor of George Floyd, on someone else's neck. People have to be willing to give up some of the things that they have so that we all can be free.
Yeah. I think so what I would like to say is racism is in our American DNA, as proven by the fact, right? Why do so many Black families carry the surname Jefferson, right? It's because our founding father has an entire lineage of Black descendants through Sally Hemings, right? And so when we think about that history, we need to know that it is in our DNA. And I also think that we need to get really, and by we, I don't mean Black people. What I want for Black people to do is experience as much joy as possible. Experience as much radical joy as your soul, your stomach could physically muster. And when you get to that point, reach out and extend your hands out and try to get some more, right? Because I think that is a form of liberation, and that is radical, right? That is defiance. What white people should do, and I oftentimes go back and forth with like, well, they're not getting it. Why aren't you getting it, right? And experiencing that frustration. Get uncomfortable. Get incredibly uncomfortable, because Black people have spent our entire history here in this country being uncomfortable. And when we get into that conversation about grit, well, people of color, Black people specifically, aren't gritty enough. I assure you, living your life as a Black person, you can't get any grittier than this. Right? It doesn't get any grittier. So make yourself uncomfortable. Experience being the only white person in the room. Experience that a couple times, because your perspective on what that feels like and what it'll take to move things forward will change. Do the work, do the hard work, not the easy work, and sign on to understand and believe and commit to Black lives mattering on a daily basis. It's not Black Lives Matter as a noun. It's Black lives should be mattering in a verb tense. And that's what I want to leave folks with at this point. I'm going to wrap up here. Any final words, y'all? I think we cleaned it up pretty nicely.
Yes, call your congressman and tell them to support HR 40.
Where can everybody find you on social media?
Ida Bay Wells.
I barely engage these days, but Al _ listen, like Nicole DM'd me earlier today, and I had to download the app to read it. No. Listen, no, social media make you crazy.
Yeah,
they will make you crazy, and then like Twitter lets a white nationalist tweet his crazy. No, I'm good. But if you would like to follow me on social media,
or Reveal. How can people see Reveal?
Yeah, you can follow Reveal. It's at Reveal or Al _ Letson.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at mercy_right now. Thank you everyone for watching, and celebrate Juneteenth, commemorate Juneteenth, and happy Emancipation Day.
I love you, beautiful people. It's good to see both of you.
You too.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone.